Mary.
Live community speeches can be good, artistic, even boring. Today, I'll be describing important aspects of 3 live community speeches that I attended. The first speech was The Faces of Martin Luther King Jr. with Antonio Edwards Jr. The second was Romancing the Muse, hosted by the Northwest Symphonietta and featuring Christoph Chagnard, composer, and Lambula Marie Pappas, soprano. The third was a sermon at the local evangelical church with Pastor Brian Olson. I learned many things, felt many things, and opposed many things while attending these speeches. The first was The Faces of Dr. Martin Luther King with Antonio Edwards, and there's a picture of him. He was nominated as Poet Laureate. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I might be wrong. I've read it many times. I've never actually said it. I was a little bit shocked because I had always known the Poet Laureate to be originating in Greek. And I found it actually pretty impressive because I didn't know that they still gave out those awards. But the Poet Laureate was originally came up with because there was a laurel that would be placed on heroes and poets of grandeur, and it was considered to be sacred to the Greek god Apollo. And typically throughout mythology, a poet laureate was known to be able to come up with prophecies via his poetry. And so whenever you got appointed to this position, it was a very high stature. You were considered right up there, right next to any type of king or governor or whatever, as a high counselor to these people, because you could have prophecies via your poems. And I think that shocked me the most, to know that they still gave out this honor. He had done a poem that to me was the most powerful of this entire speech. It was called Ancient Egyptians to Hip Hop. He didn't have it printed out anywhere, so I spent the time of going through and listening to it and actually printing out and rewriting everything that was on there. So I went ahead, and it's 3 pages. I'm not going to go through it because it takes about 3 minutes to do, but I'll go ahead and pass it around so other people can read it. There were a few things that hit home for me that I think are worth mentioning. One was the actual quote. To the 41 bullets of one African immigrant by 4 New York police officers carrying straight shooters. Yo, you do the math. 4 police officers plus 6 bullets in each gun equal 24. Someone reloaded. I felt that he needed a face, so I found him. His name was Abdul Delayo. I can't pronounce it. But in February of 1999, he was outside of his building after going out to get something to eat, and he was shot down by 4 police officers because he reached in for his wallet, and they ended up being acquitted. The second really important thing I found in the poem was he was talking about Christopher Columbus. And it said, Christopher Columbus on the Santa Maria was not flying Spain's flag, but a skull and crossbones. Does it really mean that he was a pirate? I tried to do some research on it, but I couldn't find anything, hints and rumors, but nothing of any concrete. So I did like his poetry. I did love the strength of his voice when he spoke his poetry. I will say that the overall speeches on the faces of Martin Luther King, mediocre, somewhat impressive, a lot of knowledge base on it. He had a lot of ums. He was a little bit disorganized as to where he was going with it, but the poetry was beautiful. The second one I went to was the Northwest Symphonietta, Romancing the Muse. It was a phenomenal opera. I've been to many, though I must admit that the atmosphere wasn't quite up to par that I'm used to. I'm from Florida. Everything is more overly dramatized there. She ended up doing, there was an orchestra of only 12, which is really truly amazing because back in the day when operas were really prominent, there was over 100 musicians and they did it with only 12. The conductor had a French accent and it was really nice because he was saying love. Very nice. So she ended up doing some Mozart, and overall it was beautiful. The soprano hit those notes very well. The things I didn't like about it is I was right in the front row. My boyfriend was tall. We were right by her, and she spit on us. And the violinist was I thought he was going to hit the poor girl next to him, and it felt very distracting for me to try and pay attention to the music. So I had to close my eyes, and I felt myself wanting to fall asleep. But I loved it. Overall, it was very beautiful. The last one was the Hope Evangelical Church. I felt like I was being recruited. Though there was no so only one, and a lot of handshaking and very inviting, I still felt like I was being recruited the entire time. Have you been saved? Well, I'm not here to question my soul. I'm coming because obviously I have been at some point in time. I want to learn more. And I don't feel like I learned anymore. I felt my knowledge base on the Bible via a lot of research was contradictory to what I've actually learned text-wise. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that these speeches were overall worth attending, though I must admit that if I were not required to attend them, I would not have done so on my own accord, with the exception of the opera. I enjoyed the diversity of the speeches and could not have gotten more contradictory, one speech from the other. The Faces of Martin Luther King Jr. was thought-provoking and emotional, Romancing the Muse was entertaining and talented, and the Evangelical Church was misinformed and disheartening. Overall, I take these experiences with intellect, passion, and hope.